Dan was directing that, and they did the effect, and I'm laying there on top of that car, and it's just gushing blood and gushing blood and gushing blood and gushing blood, and I'm trying, because I think this crap's funny, so I'm trying not to laugh, and he it was forever. It seemed like 3 months before he yelled cut. They pretty much emptied out all of the blood before he yelled cut on that thing, because he just wanted as much of that coverage as he wanted to run it as long as he could. And I think he was just trying to just kind of mess with me, because they just kept pumping that blood through there, and I'm just laying there. And after a while, it was so, I'm just I had to keep my composure, because I wanted to laugh, because I thought that was freaking hysterical that they were just going to pump all that blood out of there.
Yeah. I wonder how many gallons of blood they gushed out of you.
It was the size of a tall fire extinguisher that's 2 feet tall, and that's at least halfway full of blood or more, and then they compress the air in it so it shoots out that hose, and thus up and through my costume and out my forehead. So all of it, emptied the damn thing, just all of that blood just out of my forehead and down the windshield and across the hood of that car.
Oh wow!
We bloodied up the desert good that night. Yeah, it was funny too, because afterwards there's blood all over this car, this big Lincoln. And we're in the desert, and we shot all night long. I mean, we burned all the darkness. The sun was coming up, and it was out in Barstow, California, on a dry lake bed. So everybody's wiped out and they're toast, and we drive back to the hotel. And of course, nobody takes the time to wash or wipe down the car. So this rented Lincoln is sitting there in the sun all the next day with that stage blood baking into things.
Now, some of that stage blood, some of it was made with molasses and sugar and some other stuff. I mean, depending on...
It's usually, a lot of it's corn syrup based, yeah. So you have this sticky blood that is then, baking in the desert sun and heat all the next day. And, whatever poor PA whose job it was to go wash that before they took it back, I feel kind of bad for him, because that was not easy. From what I understood, they never got all of it off of there.
Well, I would think it would even stain the paint. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. I was glad that wasn't the guy in production that had to take the car back.
Yeah. Well, I hate to be the guy who paid the bill for getting it fixed.
Yes, exactly. They didn't tell me if there are any other repercussions beyond that, but I was like, they couldn't have been too happy getting a car that still had blood splatter on it.
Oh, yeah. Now, hey, I'm your therapist for the next little while. I'm going to regress you to when you were a kid, okay? Mm-hmm. Now you're about 5-6 years old, and you get a gift for Christmas or something. Like I told you before, I got they couldn't find me a doctor's kit. They found me a nurse kit. Now, we already know that Michael probably got a lawyer kit, but we already know that you got a magic kit, if I remember right.
I did, yeah. I was 8, and I got a magic kit for a gift, yeah.
And is that what got you going into magic?
It really is. I was always fascinated with the magicians on television and the specials and things like that. And when I got that thing, I was just enamored with it. For some reason, my young 8-year-old brain said, and not in this language because I didn't have it in there yet, but I was like, oh, this is a viable vehicle of expression, and I'll go out and perform with this. I had no idea that it was going to turn into what it did later. I mean, because when I started, it was magic, and it was very a great friend and mentor who's sadly gone now. His name was Robert Anderson, who worked under the name of the Great Andersini, and he was an older gentleman. He took me under his wing, and he showed me the ropes. He got me my first paying gig later. It was a birthday party for like $5.
Oh wow! Well, don't forget though. So it's like, hey guys, you have to understand. $5 back then. I don't know how old you are, and please don't tell your age. But even back 20 years ago, $5 wasn't $5 compared to now. I mean, $5 would buy you groceries for a day. I mean, where you could eat like steak and, eat really good and have a beer even with it. Nowadays, you can't get, you get a McDonald's hamburger and a Coke, and that's about it.
Well, yeah, you're lucky if you get more than a hamburger at this point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even at Mickey D's. Yeah. So I mean, so he got me started but it was all very traditional stuff. It was all, tuxedos and capes and birds and stuff like that, because that's just the kind of training I came up with, and then I took it later and did my own thing. But it was funny because even then, with you think of the black tux and the cape and everything, on the kind of very classic, stereotypical, iconic magician kind of look. And even then, it occurred to me, I'm going, all right, that guy in the tux and the cape, that dude looks like Dracula, and I thought that was cool because I already loved horror films.
Oh,
I was probably watching. Well, I know I was watching horror films before I got the magic kit. But none of it ever cross-pollinated at that point. I was into comic books, and I was a huge rabid comic book collector. And I loved horror films and weird stuff, horror, sci-fi, fantasy, all that genre.
Okay.
And just, kind of dark, twisted stuff. And then, and as I got older,
Okay, no. You're still in regression here.
Yeah.
Okay, did you have any brothers or sisters at all? Younger brother?
I do, yeah.
Now,
I have a brother.
Now, how old was he at that time? Was he younger or older than you?
We're pretty close. He's a little younger than me.
Okay, so how many times did you tie him up on a trick it didn't work?
Not much. I did. Remember he'd help me with a few things, and help me. Set up things. I made these giant playing cards, and I used to turn the garage into my own magic theater, and I would handprint tickets, draw them out, and sell them to classmates at school, and I would do my own magic theater, and so I could perform at home in my garage, which I turned into a kind of a magic theater thing. And I remember doing that, and I remember doing other things. I always loved Halloween as well, so I remember putting him in werewolf makeup. So there's a picture somewhere of werewolf makeup I put him in when I was a kid because I loved all that kind of stuff. And so he helped me a little bit, but nothing too much like that.
Okay. Now your poor mom. Okay, you're doing these magic tricks.
Yeah.
Okay, how many tricks were you pulling on your parents? Now, be honest. I mean,
I didn't always pull things on. I mean, I performed for them, and it was funny when they would have family gatherings or people over, to the house, when they were entertaining or something.
Okay, but
they inevitably would have me come out. Yeah.
I got to interrupt you. Okay, you were performing. Yeah. Okay, here's the question. Mm-hmm. Okay, you were performing for your mom and dad and friends of your parents or whatever. Okay, you were doing tricks. Let's say how many times the trick didn't go right, where where your mom goes, "Hey, that was the last bit of milk we had," or "Gee, that was my best linen you just ruined." I mean, come on. You tie somebody up and you can't get them undone.
It was a lot of my own props and things like that. So, but I did, it worked because even then I knew, I read a lot and I studied. So I knew that you had to rehearse this stuff. I knew that you had to practice, because that was the first thing, other than keeping things to yourself, keeping it a secret, because it's more fun when people don't know how it's done. The other thing was practice. Those are the first two things you learn in the world of magic and illusion is, you keep it to yourself, keep the secrets, and then practice, rehearse the hell out of it until you can't stand it anymore. And so I've always adhered to that, and I knew that I needed to rehearse. But part of it, you don't really know. There's some things you can't expect or know, and then learning how to work with an audience. You don't know what some people's reactions are going to be until you start rolling things out and performing them for actual live people. And that's when you really get a crash course in, okay, well, this or that could go wrong, and this is what you do, and this is what you do, and this is how you recover. Or, don't the old adage of don't run if you're not being chased. The thing about magic and illusion is that the audience, unless they've seen it, before, don't always know the outcome of the effect that you're doing. So if it's not exactly what you rehearsed and had planned, but is still something or something similar to it, the audience doesn't know that. So that's where it comes in. Don't run if you're not being chased. Because you don't give it away yourself if something's gone wrong. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you this. When I first married my wife, Linda, back 42 years ago, I was kind of in a little bit of magic. It was a magic store where we lived, and I'd buy, my tricks were shit. That's how bad they were. But I remember buying these handcuffs, right? And,
yeah.
And I got my wife into handcuffs and all this stuff. No, I wasn't being kinky. But I got her in these handcuffs.
See, now that, I was hoping we were going to have that conversation, because that,
I put it this way. After what happened, she couldn't even think about being kinky for at least a couple of weeks. That's how mad she was. What happened was, okay.
Really?
Well, I bought these handcuffs, and they were not the cheap ones, okay? So in other words, they weren't the ones the chains where you could just kind of like twist them and they break. So what happened is I handcuffed my wife, okay, and she was in the bathtub, and I won't go into it too much. Then she wanted the handcuffs off because I guess it was hurting her wrists. Okay, that's fine. I forgot where I put the keys. I couldn't find the keys at all. So she is handcuffed. Okay, she is handcuffed in the bathtub. Okay, affixed to one of the fixtures in the bathtub.
Wow.
So it was very embarrassing for her. We had to get a sheet and kind of halfway cover her, and the fire department had to come and cut it.
Wow.
So that was other than when I was in grade school, I did a couple of those milk tricks, and I practiced it and it would work. And then I'd get my mom and dad out there and I'd do it in the dining room and I say, okay, I'm going to do this trick with this, milk, right? With a quart of milk or whatever it was, all over everywhere. So that was pretty much my magic.
Yeah. You just needed more rehearsal. You needed more practice time, because it's so different when you roll it out in front of somebody. You can get, nerves can hit because you're about to perform this and you're hoping it goes right and everything, and you can unnerve yourself doing that. I've experienced some things like that. Nothing ever went, as off the rails. I don't think as that, because I wasn't doing a lot of things with liquids or things like that either. So
you mean you purposely didn't handcuff some babe in a shower or something, and then say, "Oh my God, I can't find the key. I guess you're going to have to be there for a while."
I used handcuffs with,
Well, we won't go there.
The young ladies I was interested in, that I was engaged with, for recreational purposes, let's say. Yes, absolutely. But yes, that's something that, because of Houdini and escapology, it's forever married to the world of magic and illusion. So it's still in there today, and that you can trace all that. That goes right back to Harry Houdini. So I did. I have a pair of thumb cuffs, and I had shackles, and I still have a different pair in the show, and I had handcuffs, and I used handcuffs in the show, and all that. So yeah, I've used devices like that many times, and in fact, for a whole season, quite many years ago, I did Houdini's milk can water escape for a whole season that I had it in the show.
Can you explain
a lot
that?
Of things like that.
Can you explain what the illusion that is?
Well, here's what it looks like. The effect that you get, nobody knows what the hell a milk can is now, really, but it's a giant, oversized metal can with a metal lid that goes on that is rigged up with four, hasps, and those things close, and then you put a lock, 4 padlocks on the top of it. It's filled with water, and they handcuff me. And they put me in the water, and you see it rushing up over the edge and everything. And then you take, meditate for a moment, have a little Zen moment, breathe, hold your breath, and go down into the water. Your crew slaps the lid on. They padlock this thing and put some sort of an enclosure around it. And then they wait and see how long it takes you to get out, or if you get out at all. Luckily, clearly, I'm here, so I always got out of it. But it's a pretty hairy experience, to actually do a water theft. I mean, and there's been guys that have died in that illusion because the can had gotten damaged in transport or things like that, where not everything was the way it was supposed to be. So it's an actual dangerous thing. Anytime you're in and enclosed and locked into anything that's actually filled to